fun, he was sweet, he was likable, he was capable, he had a great life. Young dad with 2 great kids, fabulous, wonderful wife, good job. And then one day, Dave's wife was diagnosed with cancer. And after a long, hard slog, she lost the battle and died. And Dave was now left to raise his 2 great kids, young, hold down his great job on his own, didn't have extended family that lived nearby. And he worked real hard to make it work. He had a great job that he was good at. But that meant that he was increasingly asked to go to trainings and special events and work overtime, which meant he had less time to be with his kids and no time to deal with his own grieving. And as months progressed, he was getting more and more crazed. In fact, he was finding himself truly, as he likes to say, at the end of my rope. And not just, flippantly, but I mean, I was having trouble keeping my memory. I was having trouble doing at my work. I really didn't know what I was going to do. And then one day, about 6 months after my wife died, I shared with the gal who was taking care of my kids, because I was out of town, that I, was in such a difficult place, and I had been praying. I had been praying and praying and praying, but God didn't seem to be responding. And my friend, who I said this to because I knew she went to church, said back to me one piece of advice. You got to pray out loud. Are you praying out loud? I never thought about that before. You got to pray out loud. So the next day, I got my car on my way to work, and sort of like, librarian testing the microphone, I just decided to, in the privacy of my car, just say one word to God, and then a couple, and then I got a couple of sentences out, and lightning didn't strike, and the momentum started going, and before I knew it, I was just flowing out of all my fears and frustrations and my shortcomings and my hopes, and it just all blorched out. And thankfully, I have a long drive because I needed all this time, and it felt great when I got to my office. I'd really gotten a lot of things off my chest. And then a couple days later, I noticed there was a window of opportunity for me to talk to my boss. So I went and sat down and talked with him, and I shared with him a little bit about how frazzled I'd become since my wife's death. And partly out of compassion, and partly because this is the thing that people in corporate America do now. They always direct you to a mental health specialist. And so that's exactly what I got, was a little pass to go see a therapist. And a couple days later, I'm in the therapist's office, and I start telling her my story. Before I get done, she stops me and she says, "What you need is some time off." And I said, "Oh, like a couple of weeks?" No, I was thinking more like 4 months. I got 4 months to rest, be with my kids, drive them to school, which they so needed, pick them up from school, which they so needed, Christmas shop without their mom for the first time, which they so needed. I got time to find myself again. What an incredible gift I received. And Dave is quite sure that that gift may not have come into being had he not chosen to pray out loud. Now Dave will tell me about, how Brad does his out louds. He calls them my out louds with God. And he loves, to be in a car and talk to God and not just tell him what he needs, but sometimes he's just into this state of praise and just thinking about how God has helped him every step of the way on this difficult journey beyond his wife's life, and giving him this sense of peace and love and joy. And sometimes he'll say, "I'll just be shouting at the top of my lungs, 'God, you rock!'" So the other day I was doing that, and I realized that my passenger window was down, and someone was looking at me really funny, so I rolled the window up and pretended like I was reacting to the radio. I could not find a more enthusiastic proponent of the idea that part of the arsenal of our prayers needs to be prayers that we are comfortable and confident doing, or just crazy to do out loud. We've been, last week and this week and next week, we're learning and relearning what Jesus has to teach us about prayer. Partly because that's the first thing the disciples in the Gospels want to learn. They want to learn how to pray, and that's a great first step as we seek to deepen our spiritual paths, our spiritual journey, learning prayer. And the lesson today that Jesus would teach us: pray out loud.